Today in episode 23 of the podcast, we're discussing if Sean Levy will go from Deadpool and Wolverine to the Avengers, and the Academy is finally discussing a stunt category for the Oscars. We'll also break down the first 2 episodes of the new Star Wars series on Disney Plus, The Acolyte, and review Bad Boys Ride or Die. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and welcome to We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Our first news story this week comes from Marvel. Now, Jordan Peele was reportedly attached to work on a new project for Marvel. It came out after the fact that it was potentially the X-Men movie, but it doesn't seem like they've been able to come to terms on an agreement, which is a little disappointing, but it's kind of interesting that X-Men was the chosen project that they were talking to him about.
Yeah, I think he would have done great with X-Men, but when we initially heard it, I was thinking Blade or Midnight Sun, something that's in the darker horror area, because, that's what he's excelled at so far. But yeah, to hear for the X-Men, he would do great, but it wasn't the first one that came to my mind when you said that, Marvel was talking with him for a film, and maybe they'll come back around to him. Maybe it's scheduling conflicts or something else. I don't think the script is quite done yet for X-Men, so maybe he just didn't see enough to go ahead and sign on for something like that. But hopefully we'll get something from Jordan in the MCU, because I think he would do great.
Yeah, I mean, his films are really good. I really like how I like the style that he shoots his films in. It's you see a Jordan Peele movie, you talk about it all the time. A lot of the best directors, they have like a certain signature style that you watch a Scorsese film, it's a Scorsese film. You watch a Tarantino film, it's a Tarantino film. And Jordan Peele kind of falls into that same category now. Like, you see a Jordan Peele movie, it's a Jordan Peele movie. So seeing him take that and potentially would have been working on an X-Men project, I think could have been an interesting marriage of styles. But I know with, them taking a lot of care with Fantastic Four, now that they have the rights to that, I'm assuming they're going to take the same kind of care and cautious approach when dealing with the X-Men as well, because now they're starting to slowly be introduced into the MCU. Obviously, everybody's waiting, us included, for Deadpool and Wolverine to see, the first really big dive into any real type of mutant, storytelling that they've done so far. So it's not a small undertaking putting the X-Men in an official film under the MCU banner finally. So putting Jordan Peele in charge of it could have been a good choice, but it doesn't seem like they could have, worked it out. Yeah,
I guess X-Men, they know everybody's waiting for it. They want to see what the MCU can do with the X-Men. It's a huge property, it's something that has to be done right. So I hope Marvel is taking the care, and we really don't know if this was Jordan backing it was Marvel. Maybe they didn't feel right with what they were looking for, because they probably told them what they were going for the X-Men movie, but maybe it just didn't feel that it was the right mix for them. Like I said, if we still need someone to take on Blade or the Midnight Suns, I think he should be the first choice for one of those.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Moving on over into Star Wars, so we have Leslie Headland, the showrunner for the Acolyte. She is talking the Acolyte, but they were asking her about other stuff, and she said she would absolutely love to take on Knights of the Old Republic. So this game series, there's an MMO of it. There was 2 games that was released. We've had a long in development remake that kind of combined both of them together into a modern game. She would love to make a series or movie out of it. And after, we're going to talk about the Acolyte here in just a little bit, that after what I've seen so far, I would love to see her make a take of that.
Yeah, Knights of the Old Republic is a game series that both you and I really, really enjoy. They're my favorite Star Wars games up to this point. Even like the most recent ones that have been pretty critically acclaimed, I still love the Knights of the Old Republic game. And like you said, this is one of those properties that it seems like everybody wants to get their hands on it, but they can't get it made for whatever reason for Knights of the Old Republic. And obviously we're going to talk about the Acolyte here in a little bit for our show breakdown, but the fact that she seems to be passionate about it is awesome. I love that, because I want to see this brought to whether it's a series or a movie, like you said. I would love to see that be made finally. And there's so much, depth and story that they could go to from those that they could take from like the games and, things like that, and make it into something that I think people would really enjoy. And I'm hoping eventually it gets off the ground one way or another, whether it's Leslie being attached to it or not. But.
Yeah. I hope they lean more towards a series, because it is kind of similar to what we've seen so far of the Acolyte, that it's there's a mystery behind it. There's a big story to unwind and unravel, and you kind of need that time to do that. Yeah. And I think the series would probably be best for that. So it's hoping maybe if the Acolyte does well enough that they'll go, all right, let's see what you can do with Knights of the Old Republic. Because, I want that game, the remake, to finally be done, but I love everything about that universe.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and if you've ever played the games, you know what we're talking about. But they're very critically acclaimed games too, so it's something that if they can do right, I think would be a huge hit for them, because it seems like everything they put out now generates a lot of buzz for one reason or another, but it's one that I think if they did do the time to do it right, it could be a huge hit for them. So
absolutely.
Hopefully it's something that they consider. I don't know why they wouldn't, but like you said, it seems like it's one of those properties that every time somebody tries to get their hands on it, they can't make it happen for one reason or another. So hopefully this time they'll get it right.
Yeah.
Moving on to another story, we have one of our favorite films that we've watched so far this year is Godzilla and Kong. It seems like we got some information on the next film in that series. It's going to be directed by Grant Sputro. I don't know if I'm butchering that name right.
Probably. Thank you for butchering a name for this week for me.
But it does seem like it seems like he's going to be the next director for the next film. He previously had done I Am Mother for Netflix, but it'll be interesting to see what he does with it when he gets his hands on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the director of the last two isn't returning. I didn't really see information, and maybe he has another project he's doing. I just didn't hear anything, but they're very quickly moved into getting another director set, so it seems like they must be fast-tracking to get another one, because Godzilla and Kong, The New Empire, has done really well in theaters. You know, of course, Godzilla -1 did fantastic. You had Monarch on Apple TV, so like it's huge. So it seems like they're trying to make sure they continue to capitalize on the MonsterVerse.
Yeah, striking while the iron's hot, right? Godzilla's a hot property right now. It's been really successful over the past 12 months. So why not try to keep the ball rolling while it's doing well? I'm all for it. But it'll be, I don't know if you've ever seen I Am Mother on Netflix.
I have not.
Like he's done a pretty good job with that. It's a pretty solid series if you get a chance to check it out. But him taking on a big project like that, like a Godzilla, Kong, big, significantly bigger budget, obviously, but taking on a film like that could be really interesting. I know we've liked the Godzilla and Kong Skull Island and like this newer series of films that they put together, but I'm excited to see where they take it forward, because getting what we got in the last film, which you could go back in our archives and see our review on that film. I'm interested to see the next step they take with this.
Yeah, because I'm not quite sure where they go with the story. Like what's kind of left to tell. If there's even deeper into the earth, we have a new enemy to it. I mean, the story with these are definitely kind of second to the action and the spectacle. But yeah, we'll see if Grant's ready to take on the intensity of doing a Godzilla and Kong movie.
Sure, and we'll keep everybody updated as we hear things.
So we talked about this with our Fall Guy review, about the Academy really needs to get a stunt category. We really need them... the stunt community to have their flowers. They need to get that recognition, and it seems like it might finally be happening. The Academy has announced that they are in discussions to add a stunt category to the Oscars. They're talking with, they didn't give names, but said they're talking to many people within the stunt community about making this happen.
And I would personally like to take this time to thank the Academy for watching this podcast, and if they finally do it because we've said it, thank you. We would like our invite to the next Oscar ceremony.
A trophy would look great right here.
Just give us an official Academy Award trophy as well, but, you're welcome. But, no, this is something that's, like we talked about, like every other piece that goes into making a film has an award for it, and stunts, for whatever reason, just have never been it. Obviously, you have to have... the movies that are going to be attached to it are very, obviously probably more action-oriented because they deal with the most stunt work. But, I mean, it's a very integral part of making a film, right? And these people put their bodies on the line all the time to make these films look as good as they do and make most of these stunts look as practical as they do. And there's, you still have your big-time, A-list Hollywood actors that do their own stunts still in a lot of cases. Obviously, a lot of them don't, but they're still the ones that do. But these guys finally getting, like you said, getting their flowers is really important, and I'm glad that they're taking our idea and running with it.
Yeah, I'm so glad this is happening, but I'm curious to see how they implement it, because stunt crews are a crew. It's a big group of people. So is it going to be one award for the entire group? Exactly how are they going to do? Because it could be 15, 20, 100 people doing these stunts, depending on the film, exactly how they're going to handle the award. I think is what they're trying to figure out now is just exactly, is it going to go to, your lead stunt director, or if it's going to go to the crew as a whole, which normally isn't the case. So more than likely it's going to go to, the stunt director.
I could see it being like stunt coordination in a film or something like that. Because it's kind of like how they do like scoring adaptations for it's obviously, the main composer gets probably the name on it, but it's kind of like a shared award because of all the people that go into it. It'd probably be something like that. I can imagine like stunt coordination in a movie or whatever. I don't know if they'll pare it down to a particular scene or a particular stunt actor, but the fact that there's even going to be a category for it is a huge step in the right direction. I'm excited that they're finally doing it.
I'm so glad it's there. That is potentially going to be there. Hopefully they get everything ironed out, and next year's Oscars we'll see the stunt community getting their rightful recognition.
Sure, and we'll be looking for our invite in the mail to the next Oscar ceremony, since I believe we've helped manifest this, which is cool. I love it. I'm so excited. Like, obviously we're kidding. They're not taking our ideas at heart, or are they?
It's been talked about for years. I'm just glad they're finally. I mean, maybe The Fall Guy was what really pushed them over, and seeing what they did, because not only the film, but what they did at the red carpets and on the TV interviews of really showing off what these stunt performers do, and showing off everything that goes into it. That maybe that movie finally helped. Like, okay, we'll get this done.
I love it though. But that just goes to show how a successful movie can help drive that, drive something like that across the finish line. And I really hope that's the case for next year's Oscars, because they would deserve it. And maybe, you never know, that film could be the one that winds up winning it. You never know.
Yeah.
So for our next story, we're going to be talking about a sequel that's kind of a prequel. It's a little bit like in the middle of a timeline of a whole bunch of things, but they announced another Hunger Games book that's going to be taking place kind of in between the period of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and the Hunger Games trilogy that everybody saw and read, back with the Jennifer Lawrence movies and everything like that. But it's going to be set in that time frame in between those films, and it's going to come out in 2025, the book is, but they're going to also be making a movie out of it, and it's going to follow the story of Haymitch, who was played by Woody Harrelson in the films, but it's about Haymitch's time in the actual Hunger Games. So it's kind of an exciting development.
Yeah, because we know a little bit. Haymitch didn't want to talk too much about his time, so to be able to dive into his story and get to know his character a little bit more is very intriguing. Probably not going to see Woody come back because it's going to be a younger version. They could de-age him with CGI and stuff, but I think he's in his 60s now to do the action and everything else. Like, I think we both talked about, well, he's getting everything right now. Just have Jeremy Allen White play the younger version of Haymitch and go. But it'll be interesting to see who they cast for. But, I enjoyed the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
Sure.
I think I enjoyed the original trilogy a little bit more. But to come back and do another one, it took them no time. It's like I saw the announcement for the book, and then it was like 5 to 10 minutes later. It's like, oh, yeah, the movie's coming out a year later. I'm like, okay, you move pretty quick.
Yeah, so you got to figure they'll probably be doing them simultaneously, right? Like, they'll probably get an advanced copy of the book to start making the film and stuff like that. So it kind of lines up well. But I'm curious to see who they put in it. Like, obviously, you joked because we jokingly will say you put Jeremy Allen White in everything, because he's literally doing just about everything right now. Between him and Pedro Pascal are like the two guys that are doing the most in Hollywood right now, it feels like. But good for them. But I'm excited to see the story that they tell, because he does have a little bit of that mystery to him, right? Like he intentionally wasn't talking about his time in the Hunger Games, but as we see, he becomes a mentor for Katniss, and you can see this story that you could really pull some things from, and hopefully maybe by the end of that film, Woody Harrelson does make an appearance. It could be like hey, me telling my story to someone, and we're flashing back, and this is the entire story. So he could still potentially make a cameo appearance as it in there. But I'm excited to see the story they tell. I mean, these books are incredibly popular, so I imagine when the book comes out, it's going to be a huge hit. A lot of people are going to get their hands on it and read it. And I know we're both fans of the books as well, so excited for that. But we always say, if you're going to continue to dive into a known universe of stories, if you've got creative things that you can draw from that are entertaining and, will appeal to people, that's all good and well.
Yeah. And I said, going with his story for the next follow-up does seem like a really good choice to go for not only the book but also for the movie. So yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what they end up doing with it.
For sure.
Moving on to The Last of Us. So we got a little bit more information on season 2. So it's only going to be 7 episodes. So it's going to be another shorter season. But they did mention there will be a season 3, and more than likely there'll be a season 4 because they don't feel like they could tell the entire story that they have planned out in season 3 alone. So, season 3 is going to be a much bigger, longer season with a potentially 4th season wrapping up this adaptation, which it was a great first season. If you've played the games, you kind of know what to expect, at least from a certain aspect for season 2, but 3 and 4 can be more of a mystery because there's rumors that they're working on a 3rd game now. Do they have that information on the story, or would they want that to leave, or are they just going off kind of on their own now with season 3 and 4 once they're done with 2?
Yeah, it's an intriguing story because, like you said, season 1 of the show pretty much followed the story elements of the first game, right? So the original Last of Us game, super mega hit for Sony, and the season of The Last of Us was a huge home run, right? It was really well done. We really enjoyed it. I'm excited to see how they follow up. And a lot of people assume that season 2 was just going to be the second game. Well, there's a lot of meat to the story in the second game that I think you could really dive into, but it sounds like they're going to kind of prolong it, and I don't want to say drag it out, but hopefully they could take some of those elements and make most of season 2 the second game. And if there is a 3rd game, like there has been rumblings for it for a while now, you can continue to take that story forward and kind of move the game and the TV show along at the same time, which would be pretty interesting. But the fact that they're, obviously as big of a hit as it is to do, 2, potentially 3 more seasons now of it, it's going to be interesting to see the stories they tell with it. Do they really divert from the game at that point and kind of start telling their own story, or what are they going to do? I'm not sure, but if you know what's coming in from the game, we're in for some heavy stuff in season 2, so I'm excited for that to come out whenever it does.
Yeah, because if they do go with the story from the 3rd game, is that potentially coming out before the game does, or are they going to give the game the time because it spoils the game, or something like that? So I almost feel like they have to kind of go out on their own without of it. But if you've adapted the first 2 games and then you don't adapt the 3rd game, so I hope they haven't painted themselves into a corner causing issues. We know what Game of Thrones happened when they got past where the books were, and just hope that they're doing right by seasons 3 and 4, and it's not just kind of tacked on because of popularity, because we have had that happen a lot. Something gets popular. Again, we shared our thoughts on Shogun going from a limited series to now 2, 3, and 4, like 2 or 3 more seasons. Like, we're mixed on that because it's going beyond the scope of the story that they adapted, and we haven't had that many adaptations that have gone beyond the original written story do well.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of pick on Game of Thrones now just because of how immensely popular it was and how polarizing the last 2 seasons of the show were, and for good reason. And if you've gone back and watched it, you know exactly what I mean, which is a little unfortunate. But I mean, we'll see what they do, right? And I love the show already. I'm excited for season 2, and we'll see where they take it from there, because you just never know what you're going to get, right? It's a total crapshoot, but we're here for it. We'll give it the opportunity and see where they go with it.
Yeah, they did so well with The Last of Us season 1 that I'm on game to watch it all the way through. I've played both games, and then looking forward to the 3rd one. But we'll see where that story goes from there. If they match up with the game, or if they just move on and do their own thing.
I love it. And I want to kind of come back to Marvel, which I feel we do a lot, but Marvel keeps making big news, right? So with Deadpool and Wolverine coming up, the director Sean Levy is a little bit more in demand due to the hype of the film, right? So his director star is rising a lot, so much that Marvel has offered him the chance to direct the next Avengers film, which is exciting. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. The cast is going to be crazy for that based on the rumors of the story anyway, and you've got Secret Wars coming up, which is going to be just absolutely bananas. But as far as Sean Levy goes, he originally turned down the offer, I want to say about a year ago, but it seems like he could potentially be coming back around to it, because I think he originally turned down Deadpool at one point too, didn't he?
I believe so. Yeah.
And no, he turned down Wolverine, I think.
Or
Did he turn down Wolverine or Logan?
Wolverine, I think he turned down Logan.
That's what it was, yeah, because I remember him talking about how much he regretted it, and then he saw the film, he's like, man, I should have done that. Now I get the opportunity to put him in this one, I'm all for it. But yeah, him getting the potential reins for the next Avengers film is a big deal.
Yeah, it looks like Kevin Feige and Marvel are really excited about what he did with Deadpool and Wolverine, which we are too. Like, we can't wait to see it. If you've seen the video yet, or if you haven't yet, go watch the announcement of the Wolverine popcorn bucket from the movie. Just ridiculous. We can't wait to see that, but they seem to be so all in on him now that, all right, we feel like you blew away Deadpool and Wolverine. Come take on the Avengers, which, you know, that's much bigger. I mean, we're hearing Deadpool and Wolverine is going to have an absurd amount of cameos, so many characters to balance, and if he did that so well, that, all right, let's see how you handle the Avengers, which we're hearing rumors of 60-plus characters going to be showing up in the Avengers movies, but we haven't seen it yet. We've seen some of his previous films, they were all fun, and I think that with the Atom Project and that he did with Ryan, and then there was Free Guy with Ryan as well, all fun. Let's see what he does with the Avengers. Like, I'm excited if he is the one to take on the Avengers, and I think he's got the script in hand. He's thinking about it. I think previously there was like some scheduling conflicts, but Marvel really moved stuff around to make it work with the delays they've had from the writer's strike and everything else. Seems like maybe now they're going to make it work and get him on board the Avengers.
I'm excited because, like you said, he's got a really good rapport working with Ryan Reynolds. I know they're really good friends. And if that means we're going to get Deadpool mixing in with the Avengers too, I'm all for it because it's going to be chaos.
There was rumors that, we're going to see Deadpool and Wolverine in Secret Wars, but nothing was talked about these Avengers film. But now kind of rumors are popping up that because of how much they love Deadpool and Wolverine, we might see Deadpool and Wolverine pop up in the first Avengers film, which, was called the Kang Dynasty. That's not the name anymore. We don't know what's going to be called, so it's just untitled Avengers film.
Right.
But, yeah, we might see more Deadpool and Wolverine popping up because of him and because of Deadpool and Wolverine.
As long as they keep making solid stories, I'm here for it, right? Like, I think so much is going to hinge on the success of this film, but I don't have any fears, worries, or doubts that Deadpool and Wolverine is going to be far and away the biggest film of the year, just financially. I've yet to run into anybody not excited about the film.
It's easily going to break $1 billion because we really haven't had a huge blockbuster yet. The movie industry is still kind of, I'd say, still recovering from what COVID did because they were taking stuff straight to streaming and, not doing theatrical releases. And a lot of people shifted their way. And we've already seen with The Fall Guy and even with Furiosa and a few others that just the summer box office just hasn't been what it used to be. Like, you would count on, all right, this is the start of the summer box office. We're going to have 100 million after 100 million after 200 million, 300 million. But, they've been very slow to build. I think Furiosa just hit over 100 million globally, still kind of under its budget and everything else. So Deadpool and Wolverine does really seem to be potentially the first huge blockbuster of the year.
Yeah, I mean, there's a deeper conversation to be had about that, right? Because, obviously, you have so much going on in the world right now, and everything's getting significantly more expensive. And I think the audience is there for these movies, and for whatever reason, I mean, we could probably figure out the reason why they're not going out to see as many movies as they have been, or certain select movies that you would probably normally have that are big hits are just doing okay or adequately or average. But I think for the right movies at the right time, there's still a huge audience that will turn out in droves for it. And I'm pretty confident that Deadpool and Wolverine is going to be that film. But like you said, with everything being so much more expensive now, with, inflation prices are going up, people's salaries aren't adequately rising to meet those things. People are being a lot more selective of, the experiences that they do take out. Because going out and seeing a movie, like, you're a father with 2 little girls. Like, I know it's not cheap for you to take the family out to see a movie, and I know we're going to do that for the one coming up this week, but this next episode. But it's so, and I don't mean to divert from the news too much and go off on a little bit of a tangent, but it's really, like you say, like, it's caused a shift, and I think people are just so much more selective with how they spend their money and when they go out and do these types of things, that maybe they're not going to the movies as much. Maybe they're taking a day out to the park or going to the zoo or doing something else that they would probably could have done both, but are now having to be a little bit more selective of when they do it.
So yeah, like everything is just so much more expensive now. And we even saw with Deadpool and Wolverine, we saw some people talking about $25, $30 tickets in some markets to go see the film. And yeah, coming up with Inside Out 2, coming out next week, I'm going to take my family to it. It's going to cost us probably $50, $60 between tickets and snacks to go see the movie. And a lot of people are, after COVID and budgeting and taking things down, they just still haven't gone back out to theaters, which, we love the theatrical experience other than people talking and not putting their phones away and everything else, which we've already talked about once, but we still love that experience in the theater. And, we hope we do have some of these films like Deadpool and Wolverine that does help revigorate people to want to go out to theaters to see.
Yeah, and it's pricey. And you even say like, $50, $60 for you to take the family out. That's kind of mild. We live in an area where prices are a little bit more affordable still. Like, it's expensive, but not as expensive as, like, I know friends that live in Los Angeles that go by themselves to the movies and it's $40. You know what I mean? Not alone taking, 3 or 4 people to the theater with them. You know what I mean? Like, it's an expensive night out. And there's a deeper conversation that we could have about that, is like the cause and effects of, just the economy in the world and everything, people's financial situations now being what they are. And, it's hopefully something that we can rebound to and get back to. Cause like I said, if the movie's right, if it's the right film at the right time, people will still go out and see it. Like we saw it last year with, Barbie and Oppenheimer both being billion-dollar films. Like the potential's still there. It's just, it's got to be the right movies at the right time, I think. And it's good to see, and it's also frustrating to see if you're in the industry working on these films that, how is this going to affect how studios budget for films now if they're not seeing that return on their investment at this point?
And you also got to look at something like Godzilla -1, because it was made for under $15 million. It was a gorgeous movie to look at, and they did a special effects spectacle of a film for what is a relatively nothing budget in Hollywood these days, because everything's upwards of $200 million now, and we had a big film that was done for under 15, so maybe there's something they can learn by, what they did there to help balance those budgets with that, because I think Furiosa was like 160, it's made about 112, so it, it's made over 100 million, but it's still considered a failure in theatrically because it hasn't made its budget back.
Sure.
And so, yeah, there's definitely a big shift. Even like TV productions are starting to cost more. You're seeing bigger, higher budgets and, more detail. Even we can talk about in the Acolyte that it has a, really solid looking series. Like it's a film-like series. So there you've got the budget for TV going even higher as well. And maybe more people are like, well, if TV's getting that big of a caliber towards looking like a movie, then I don't really need to go to the movies to watch a film.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the whole media landscape is going to look, I want to say 5 years down the road, and how different it's going to be now. Because if you look back to pre-COVID to now, because we're kind of at that point now. We're almost 4 years now since the, beginning of COVID and the pandemic, and the way, everybody shifted how they live their lives. If you think about movies 5 years ago versus them now, and like people turning out in droves to see them, and how films are made, it's going to be very interesting to project that 5 years into the future and see just how much this is going to affect how things are made and how, people consume this media now. Because like you said, there's so much that's going into the at-home experience now that what's it going to look like?
And of course, AI thrown in there as well for the next 5 years of how they're going to try to, like, they seem all in to use it, but it's still that gray area with everybody of just, is it the right thing to use? But yeah, we'll see how the landscape changes here, but
it's gonna be a wild case study.
Yeah, and we expect the Avengers to make a ton of money when it comes out. Like, those are ones you can pretty much count on, especially if they do get Sean Levy and Deadpool and Wolverine does as well as we all feel it is. I think it's tracking extremely well from 2 month early pre-sales. When you put a movie out for pre-sales 2 months ahead of time, you're expecting a large crowd to see that movie. So yeah, if they get him on board going into the next Avengers movie, then we're probably expecting a huge blockbuster out of the next Avengers.
I'm excited.
Going to the small screen, it looks like Eli Roth is going to be bringing Hostel to TV, to making a series about it, and he got a pretty big star with Paul Giamatti to bring the series to life.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that it's getting a TV series, because if you've seen the Hostel films, they are very gory, very gritty, very violent, and it's, the fact that it's coming into a series now. Did we hear who's actually getting the media rights for that? Like,
I'm not sure who's getting it. Yeah,
because it's intense. Like, is it going to keep a lot of that intensity? Because it is very intense. Like, Eli Roth is known for making some intense films, but Hostel is one in particular that was very graphic, very violent, very very gory, and there's some other adjectives that I probably can't say on this podcast to describe some of his films, and for good reason. But the fact that he did that's a huge get, getting Paul Giamatti to be the star of this series, or one of them, and that's a huge get for him. But I'm very interested to see, like, if they tone it down any for the TV series. It's very much going to be a TVMA thing that he's going to do.
So you're saying we're not going to see it on Disney Plus?
Not a chance at Disney Plus. If it did, that would be wild.
I would probably say Amazon might be a top runner for it, just because of what they do with the boys. Like, there's nothing that's held back on the boys, so that would probably be the best fit. But yeah, I don't remember seeing anything on where it might be currently looking at to be coming out on.
Yeah, that's crazy though. But Amazon probably would make the most sense. I didn't want to speak to if another studio had their hands on it, because Netflix could potentially be an option for that as well. But man, that's wild that it's getting a TV series, because those are some intense films if you haven't seen them. So excited for that. Good for Eli Roth. Crazy that he's doing a TV series. I know he's more of a film director, but you're seeing a lot of that turnover. Like, a lot of these guys are moving into TV, and it kind of speaks back to that last conversation that we just had about, the shifting landscape and, TV shows getting significantly larger budgets, that maybe these big-time directors may start trying their hand at television and seeing how they work.
Yep.
So that's going to be interesting to see for sure.
And speaking about the boys that I just did, so we got Eric Kripke, kind of said originally he had a 5-season plan for the boys, that it was just going to, 1 through 5, he's done, he knows where it's going to end, he knows how it's going to happen, but now he's like, well, I don't think 5 seasons is going to be it, because it's extremely popular. It's still going strong. He said he still knows how he wants to end it and how it's going to get there. Hopefully we don't see too much stretching. As much as I love the show, anything that if you try to stretch out too far, especially if you had a 5-season plan and now you're moving beyond that, you don't want it to go too far when you just kind of lose that whole point of that ending you originally had. But it does sound like we're getting at least 6 seasons of the boys, and I'm all for it as long as they continue to do well with moving this story along to its eventual conclusion.
And that's when you start talking about quality over quantity, right? Like, if you had this specific artistic vision for a 5-season series and you start to stretch it out because either they're offering you enough money to do it, which, bless you if they do, like, get that bag by all means, but do you start sacrificing some of that quality to produce more quantity of content? Like you said, does that start to get stretched a little bit beyond their means? But we're seeing it right now. The quality of the show is just as good now as it was in the beginning of the series. We're just getting ready to drop season 4 this coming week. Like, it's finally coming out. Everybody's excited for. It's produced some, popular spinoffs with Gen V being extremely popular that they're shooting season 2 for now. And, if they can keep this going creatively, by all means, go for it. But like you said, at what point is the sweet spot, depending on the type of story that you're trying to tell, to keep it like as impactful and as meaningful and as quality of content as it is? Is it 5 seasons? Is it 6 seasons? Is it 7 seasons? Because you see throughout the course of like TV history, even like some of the shows that go 10, 11, 12 seasons, like there's always a couple seasons that don't necessarily hit, which maybe they eventually can turn right back around to and become high quality again. But eventually you do see that point where the quality of a show starts to dip a little bit. And do they get the bandwidth to recover and get back to their former glory? It's an interesting case study. I'd love to break that down, honestly, for some of these shows and like that lasted maybe 10 seasons or longer, what the quality of content, like, people feel like started to dip at a certain point, and did it ever really recover,
Yeah, because there's 2 that, right off the top of my head that I think about whenever I think about, well, we're doing this many seasons, so now we're going to do it longer. One, main one is Lost.
Sure.
Because we kind of know they had a game plan going in that it was going to be so many seasons, and they had how it's going to end in the middle, but it was so popular they started stretching it out, and it lost a little bit of its quality there at the end. And of course, the ending was very controversial at the end, but they also was a Walking Dead. You know, we were both big Walking Dead fans, and it was when Negan kind of got introduced, which, you know, that was a very big part of the comics, but it was a kind of a turning point for the show where a lot of people felt like they kind of lost themselves a little bit for a few seasons there and started to rebound. I still haven't watched the final season because of that I felt like I just kind of, I wasn't as intrigued with the story anymore towards the end, because it was 12 seasons they ended up going with, which a lot of people felt maybe 9, 10 is where it should have ended, and just kept going. And now we've got spin-offs with some of the characters, and hopefully it doesn't get to that point where it's so popular that it becomes kind of The Walking Dead, 30 spin-offs, so stretching that you kind of start losing interest, because I don't want to lose interest in The Boys. It's been so good so far. Just hope that, you know, Eric is able to keep it still grounded in a window. Like, well, you go from 5 to 7, okay. 5 to 15 seasons, that's another story.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I know you and I have talked about, like, there's certain weeks that we're going to do this podcast where one of us is going to be traveling, and we may have to double up on episodes, which thank you, by the way, for everybody who checked out our Guilty Pleasures episode that we just dropped last week. But there's opportunities for that, and I actually think an interesting episode. Sorry, I don't mean to workshop this on an actual episode of the show, but I think a fun episode would be to dive into a topic like that, like shows that, you know, shows or even movie franchises that once you got to a certain number, like, because a lot of people talk about the Fast and Furious movies are the same thing. There's 10, 11 of those films, and did it dip in quality and then go back up again? Like, those are fun topics to have. I think it'd be a fun dive in for an episode would be to, you know, kind of dive into some of these and take examples of did it dip and did it come back up again, or did it die because it lasted longer than it should have? I think it'd be a fun one to have.
Let us know in the comments over on our Discord if you want to see us tackle a topic like that and talk about, you know, some big series, throughout series or movies that you think have done that, and maybe we'll investigate and do a full breakdown of that.
I love that. That would be a fun topic to dive into. But yeah, to your point though, with The Boys, the quality of it has been so high that you hope that it continues to maintain that. But could it, if it lasts longer than maybe it should? I don't know. We'll find out. But they're not slowing down anytime soon just yet. We'll see if they eventually hit that brick wall. Hopefully they don't, but you never know, right? It's something that is a very real possibility and worth talking about for sure.
Yeah, because it really depends. Like, of course, we got with Homelander, and we have with, you know, the supporting cast that are coming after him and stuff. How long can you keep them apart? How long can you have where they're fighting against each other, then they stop, and then something else comes up and fight? Like, that can be stretching a little bit too far if you want to try to make it make logical sense and, you know, feel like the story is still continuing right. Like, there's only so long you can keep that eventual conclusion from happening, and you just hope it's not stretched too thin.
You don't get that final showdown in season 12 and we're only on season 4. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but it'll be fun to keep track of and watch for sure.
Yep.
One of the things that we've talked about a lot on the podcast are like merging companies and, you know, merging ideas and properties, you know, coming together, which we're seeing a lot of. And one of the big stories that's come out now is Paramount and Skydance have announced that they are merging for $8 billion. It's an $8 billion acquisition. So you're getting Skydance falling under the Paramount umbrella, kind of merging together to form another conglomerate. And this is an interesting pairing, I think.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot. There's so many studios that are looking to merge, even still Paramount looking to potentially merge with other companies too. Like, there's a big influx of just, all right, we want to merge, we want to do this, we want to do that. Like, the studios are really talking to each other. We're potentially looking like we're getting down to, you know, going to have 2 or 3 mega studios with all the others below them, instead of having, you know, 30, 40 studios out there on their own. They're all going to be under one big parent company, which I don't really know how I feel about that, but maybe with the way Hollywood is going and the cost of everything, that's the kind of best way to keep these studios and their properties going.
Yeah, it's going to be, like you said, we've talked already about like 5 years into the future. This is another example. What are these companies going to look like in 5 years? Like, are you going to have a, you know, one of the things I like to joke about is the long intro title before like the movie starts, where it's like this studio and a corporation with this production company with this. It's like that card gets a lot longer for every couple years, where it was just like, okay, this is a Columbia Studios picture, and here we go. Now it's like it's a Columbia Studios picture marked by this production company and this directors guild or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it seems like there's more of those getting put in front of films now, and like, is it going to be like 10 minutes of just who this film is in association with before the film even starts? But we're kind of getting to that point now, because all of these are just coming under the same umbrella, and it could be a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because you could have, you know, these projects getting funded because they have much more significant financial backing, but at the same time, could it be harder for these films to get made? You just don't know.
Yeah, you probably got a lot more smaller films that are just going to be left to the wayside just because, while before you were a smaller studio that would take on this stuff, but now you're part of a larger studio that's like, well, we'd rather take that budget and make another Godzilla and Kong movie or something like that instead of making a smaller, you know, small horror movie or small TV show or something like that, that you're probably going to see a lot, probably more roped in conditions that you're going to get from these studios underneath one blanket of what's going to be made now, because they're all looking at it. Is that going to make us a profit or not? Is that going to make us a large profit or not?
Now I'm also kind of wondering, are you going to start seeing more instances of, like, you know, one of the stories in Hollywood right now is Kevin Costner putting so much significant capital of his own into getting his own passion projects made, and the return on his investment may not be as significant as he wants, but are you going to start seeing more people like that front their own films because of this? You know what I mean? Is that going to start being a trend? That's going to be something that could be potentially interesting to watch too, because if you got these guys that maybe don't want to, you know, feel they're not going to get the proper support from a bigger studio, that they're going to start putting up their own money to get these movies made. It's going to be an interesting dynamic in Hollywood for the next, 5 to 10 years to see if that becomes a thing or not.
Or if we see all these studios that we know of now go underneath a big blanket, and then we have a bunch of new independent studios popping up to do the stuff that they won't do, and it's just kind of a cycle. All those that were small are now big underneath one blanket, and now, we have new studios popping up to put out some new films and TV shows that the big studios won't touch anymore because they're just so huge. They don't, want to look at something that's not going to make a mega budget.
It's going to be interesting to see for sure, because, like you said, the landscape just keeps changing, and you wonder what the next evolution of it's going to be, and it could be that. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on, to see, one, where all these properties wind up, but at the same time, where does that leave, independent filmmakers and other things like that, and how these films wind up getting made too, because you could either see a dichotomy of like a $2-3 million film versus a $200 million film, and what they look like and how well they do. It's going to be an interesting case study for sure.
Yeah, and to kind of go along with that, with we're talking about franchises that have been roller coasters with quality and everything else, and with smaller and more kind of independent feeling films. We had Prey that came out, I believe, in 2022, which took Predator to a different way. We went to Native Americans. We went to kind of a smaller, grittier story with it, and it did well. It was well received. I really enjoyed the film.
It was really good.
We have the next in that series with Badlands, got its first casting with Elle Fanning is going to be the lead of Dan Trachtenberg's Badlands film. That's another one, with these big mega studios.
Sure.
Will something like this, going a more smaller route with these films, especially a big franchise like Predator,
sure,
are these going to continue being made if they're only doing, just so well? Critically, it did really well. I think it was mainly released on streaming because it came out, shortly after COVID. It was kind of a streaming film, but it did really well. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious to see how Badlands kind of survives this, new, just mixed up world of studios combining and shifting and everything like that.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's an interesting case. These are all very interesting case studies to kind of pay attention to if you're big nerds about it like we are, just kind of seeing how these films track, and what's successful and what isn't, and what goes into making a successful film in 2024 and beyond, right? So, like you said, Prey was very well received. Fan score was even significantly high on it, but it did very well streaming, and seeing if it can make it back out onto the big screen now. And it's going to be interesting to see. Putting Elle Fanning in it, I think, is a great idea. We'll see how well she does with it as well. But there's some of those like older type successful films, like we're both looking forward to, like Alien Romulus. That's going to be really good. Is this Predator film also going to be very successful? But like you said, it feels like it's a less significant financial investment potentially going into these films and seeing how well they do. It's gonna be fun to watch, because I would love for a film like that to not get a heavy budget but still do so well commercially that maybe it does kind of shift focus a little bit on, okay, maybe we don't need to put $300 million into a movie for it to be successful. You never know.
Yep.
Does it not sacrifice quality? Who knows? I know there's a large section of people that feel that, you know, a lot of these films are too over VFX'd at this point, but I don't know, man. It's a weird line to walk depending on the type of film that's being made. Yeah,
budgets definitely seem like they're getting that out of hand. Even some, as we talked about with, now why can't I think of the movie? So we were talking about, it was Joker. So Joker Part 2, which you think wouldn't be that CG heavy or anything. It's a darker, grittier film, but it had a bigger budget than Dune Part 2. And so that's one you can really go and look at, as, you know, we haven't seen Joker 2 yet, but does it really justify needing, what, $20-30 million more than Dune Part 2, which is a gigantic sci-fi epic over a dark, gritty, psychological drama? Like, the budgets shouldn't really, on paper, if you looked at them, they shouldn't be close to each other.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it would be in the same ballpark, right? That's still like the craziest thing I think I've heard in film in the last several years, is the budget for that being bigger than just a gorgeously shot, epically told, and some would say over VFX Dune movie. And it's just crazy what goes into it, right? But yeah, I mean, we're curious to see what this film looks like when it finally comes out. It's gonna be exciting for sure. I know a film you and I are also both really much looking forward to that we really enjoy. We enjoy the Knives Out films.
Yep.
And we jokingly said in our previous episode that they're notorious for getting big name casts. Well, guess what? We just got a whole bunch of names that are attached to this film, and it's going to be a Netflix. Like, it might be one of those Netflix releases that's only in theaters for like a week or two. But you've got a lot more being added to this cast. You know, Knives Out, the sequel, I think it's called Wake Up Dead Man.
Yep.
Is what it's called. But yeah, you've got Josh Brolin, Thomas Hayden Church, Glenn Close, Jeremy Renner, Mila Kunis, Kerry Washington, all being added to this film, which is huge, right? Like, it's another big name cast, and it's so fun to see like some of these films that you're like, there's no way how did they get all of these people to sign up for these films? We get a couple of those a year where it's just like, you see the trailer and it's just like big name, big name, big name, big name, big name, big name. And it's not like an animated voiceover film. It's like an actual live action like movie where it's like just huge name after huge name being attached to this. And this is just a testament to, one, the respect that these films have in Hollywood, but two, just how well beloved these movies are that they could draw a cast like this.
Yeah, it's a pretty set cast. And you already have Daniel Craig, who's been a part of all of them. He's going to be returning as well, which that was a fun character to see him play after being Bond for so long, to be able to kind of be a little more looser and fun with it. But this is a genre that has really exploded in the last several years with the murder mystery kind of coming back around, and it's been, you know, more popular and doing so much better than I think a lot of people would really have expected with the Agatha Christie movies, with the Murder on with the Nile, and with Orient Express, and now you've got the Knives Out going 3 deep now. Like, I'm loving that it's doing, because it's, you know, it's a genre that really hadn't been done that much in a while, and now we've got a ton of them coming back, and getting a cast like this to join. Each one, the first 2 were really stacked, but continue saying like, all right, 3 movies in, we can get Glenn Close to come do a Knives Out movie. Like,
Crazy.
That's great.
I love it. But like you said, it seems to speak to some of the cyclical nature of Hollywood, right? Because like you said, it's been so long since they've done it. It's a well you can go back into, and it's a formula that works when it's done right. And these films are showing that, you know, now you can do it right. And it seems like a lot of people are getting on board to make those types of films, which I'm all for. I'm excited for it. Like I said, I love the first 2 Knives Out films. I'm ready to see this third one.
Hey, and you know the budget for this probably isn't going to be that small just because of the names that you've got in there. They're alone going to, you know, be a large portion of it, but we haven't seen anything on that. But you expect this is, And even though it's going on Netflix, Netflix has been spending a decent amount of money on their properties lately.
Yes, they have. Yes, they have. And it's going to be exciting to see when that comes out. I'm excited for the trailer for that, just to see kind of the aesthetic and what the theme of that one's going to be for sure.
Yeah. To kind of continue on with the murder mystery stuff, you had Robert Downey Jr. This was back in 2011 was the last time we got one of them was Sherlock Holmes films. We kind of thought maybe that was done. He was also doing, little
Couple
independent
small projects.
movies with the Avengers and Iron Man during that time too.
Oppenheimer,
But now there's some more discussion that we might end up getting Sherlock Holmes 3, which now might be 14, 15 years after we got the second one. I enjoyed the original movies. They were fun. They were silly.
Sure.
Robert Downey Jr. played Sherlock Holmes really well, even though you've got, of course, an American playing a British detective, and you got Jude Law in there with them. But they had a great dynamic together, and I think the films were really enjoyable. So I really do hope we get a solid Sherlock Holmes 3 here in the next few years.
Yeah, and that's another one that I think will do really well when it comes out, too. But they were really well shot. I believe they're Guy Ritchie films as well. Guy Ritchie was attached to direct them. I'd love to see Guy Ritchie attached to that one too. I'm sure he probably would, if the right situation comes along. But yeah, I mean it's been a minute since we visited that. If they've got the right story to tell and the right backing and the time to make it, I'm all for it. You know what I mean? And I really enjoyed Sherlock Holmes 1 and 2. They were both really good. I thought Jude Law was great in both films. I thought Robert Downey Jr. was great in both films. But I'm excited to see if they can go back to that well and make another good story out of it for sure.
Because we had like the Enola Holmes films on Netflix where we got a different tale with Holmes, and there, of course, there was the BBC series with Sherlock and everything that, this is a character that's been around for a long time, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, it's a well you could definitely go to, and there's a lot of depth of stories for Sherlock Holmes that you can touch on and take inspiration from for sure. That have kind of been a launching point for several other different types of franchises as well, in that whole mystery solving detective type stories. So it's definitely one that I hope they go back to and can make it work, because those are fun movies. I really enjoy them.
Yeah, I'd love to see Robert return, and because he's talking now even about returning as Iron Man, that he's ready. Like when he finished Endgame, he was packed it up, said he was done, he'd never return, and now he's feeling like after Oppenheimer and everything else, he's like, all right, I'm ready to go back and have some fun with these other properties that I said I was done with. So good on him that he's still continuing, his great run of stuff. And I hope to see him again as Sherlock. And I hope they get the right story to bring it back after so long.
Yeah, because you hope it's not too big of a chunk of time to go back to that well and have it have the same impact that the first couple ones had. Because they were both really popular movies and did really well. So I can imagine if he comes back for that, it'll do really well as well. So I'm excited to see if that eventually gets made and off the ground.
Yep.
Moving on to another property that has been a little dormant for a couple years now, but it looks like we're getting a Tomb Raider anime coming out this year on Netflix. I believe it's coming out in October. It's going to star Haley Atwell as the voice of Lara Croft, so that's kind of exciting. But Netflix has really been killing the anime game lately in the last couple years with some really successful animated series coming out on that, and looks like the next one that's going to be kind of a big property for them could be this Tomb Raider series.
Yeah, I've enjoyed like the Castlevania series they did, Blood of Zeus. There's been so many more that they've done that with animation that they've done really well with, and give me anything with Haley in it. Like, I'm a huge fan of hers. Like, she's been I can't think of anything she hasn't been good in. So to have her as the voice of Laura, that's going to match up, I think, really well.
Yeah, I think she'll do really well with it too. But it's been a little bit since we've seen the last Tomb Raider film, and I don't know what story this is going to tell just yet, but it does appear that it's going to be out in the fall in October. So it's exciting and definitely one to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, and of course we got the live action with Phoebe Waller-Bridge is doing together. We don't have any casting or anything on that, but it looks like Tomb Raider's starting to get another resurgence. Like, it seemed like the last game series that it was spawning a bunch of stuff off, and we got the one film, and that kind of just fell apart, and now they're kind of going anime and doing another live action. So hopefully the anime helps get the interest back up into Lara Croft and Tomb Raider, and helps that live action series do well.
Yeah, I hope it does well as well.
So we do kind of have another series that is kind of coming back from the dead almost. We thought it was we've got 2 films out of the 300 series. We kind of, thought that's probably it. That's all we're getting out of it. It's based off of the graphic novel. But it looks like we're returning to the world of 300 with a series with potentially Zack Snyder still attached. So when we talk about budgets for movies and TV shows, this was one that was, very heavily stylized, used a lot of CGI, a lot of green screen. It was kind of known for its visual prowess, and of course with the physique of everybody and helping Gerard Butler, go up more. So it's kind of interesting that they're going after all this time. I forget, it's been at least 10 plus years since we got the second 300 movie, that they're returning to do it as a series.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about like something that spawned a whole generation of stylization as far as how things were shot in this particular genre in particular, that it's going to be interesting to see now after all that time how they come back to it and what it's going to look like. Obviously, it's crazy having Zack Snyder attached to it as a series because, like we said, we just talked about like Eli Roth doing a series. Now you got potentially Zack Snyder, who's known for making these over-the-top budgeted action films.
His stuff doesn't have a low budget.
Yeah, and he's going back and making a series, so it's going to be crazy to see like how much financially is going to be put into this and what it's going to look like and what story they're going to tell. I don't know if he's necessarily directing or he's going to be like a producer on it, but the fact that he's attached to it is kind of a big deal for it, because 300 was incredibly successful, especially at the time, and it was such a groundbreaking visually type film that it's going to be interesting to see them go back to that well and see what kind of stories they tell.
Yeah, it does look like he's looking to be on board to direct at least a few episodes, or maybe the premiere. But I would assume he's going to stay on as an executive producer, because this is something that was his baby, along with Sin City and everything else that was done during that time, that really showed off his visual flair, but also his love of slow-mo and everything else. So it being a prequel series to 300, he's working with Warner Brothers on it. It's going to be interesting to see exactly how they do this and what kind of budget we're looking for this series, because, you would think something that is, guys not wearing a whole lot in the action sequences, but those movies had a huge budget. So we'll see if they try to constrain him or if they continue to do that series with a pretty large budget.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to see where they go to, for sure. Now, another property that we've mentioned here before, but Toy Story 5 is in the works. Like we've mentioned that previously, but we did get confirmation now that the man who has been kind of at the helm of each of those films and has done so many incredible films for Pixar over the years. He's done the Finding Dory movies, the Finding Nemo films. He's done, I want to say, WALL-E, a whole bunch of other like Disney Pixar films. Andrew Stanton is on board to do Toy Story 5 as well. So there is going to be continuity in what may be the final story in this series. I don't know, because every time it feels like, at least for the last two Toy Story films, that it was going to be the last one, and we still haven't come to an end of our story yet. And it does seem like he's on board to do the fifth one, which I am glad. If they're going to make it, I'd like that continuity for sure.
Oh yeah, he's definitely a heavy hitter at Pixar. He wrote every Toy Story movie so far that they've done. I assume he's going to be writing this one as well, along with directing it. But yeah, every pretty much huge hit that Pixar has had, he has been either the director for it or the writer for it, and it's great to see that he's still a part of it, because we know Pixar just unfortunately had a bunch of layoffs the last few films, which I've enjoyed everything they put out, but commercially they haven't done as well. But it's also they got stuck with many of their movies going straight to streaming and didn't just, I don't know if it's because of that, just didn't get the reception it deserved. So having him behind Toy Story 5 definitely seems like the right thing to do. He's been involved from the very beginning on it, so to tell the story, like you said, hopefully maybe this is a final one, even though I've enjoyed it and enjoyed watching it with my kids, that it's another one that you want to make sure is not going on that long, because it was kind of, for a while there with Pixar, they weren't really a sequel company. They were about creating original stories, and then it started looking at the profitability of sequels, and now we're going into 5. Like I mentioned before, I'm still going to say it. I hope they end it with, somehow it ending it at a baby shower with a box handed to Andy, and he opens it up, and there's Woody and Buzz and all his old toys that he gets to hand off to his kid.
Which would be an absolutely awesome way to end it. But like you said, it's crazy that, Pixar is at this point now where they keep going back to the well on these stories, but commercially they're well. I'm going to make a bold claim right now. Toy Story 5 is not going straight to streaming. Obviously not. But, there was a time where that was the case, like you said, a couple of years ago, where some of these, went straight to streaming. And then, in some cases, I want to say the Red film, I forget what that one was called, but it went straight to streaming. But then they put it out in theater, and it did really well. It was wild to see, that film do well in the theaters again. And then, what was it, Elemental?
Elemental started off so slow that they thought, oh no, we've got another kind of, but it just had that slow build to where it ended up actually doing really well in theaters. But I've watched it a few times with my kids, and I was like, it's a beautiful little film, and it's that weird time with Pixar. You could count on them to be a large, big box office haul, but through COVID or whatever choices have been happening lately, it's just okay, what's happening with Pixar? They're not doing as well. They're not received as well. They're not making as much money. Let's hope that they're kind of getting back on track. Like I said, unfortunately, 17% of their staff being cut, that they can get refocused. Maybe it's a little too much of Disney in there, and they need to be able to go back to just being Pixar and doing what they do best. But here's hoping that they do a good job with Toy Story 5. But it seems like they got the right guy to handle it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, having, like you said, that continuity hopefully helps continue that same quality of story. And it's not a case of, a guy does 2 films and they go back for a third and it's a completely different brain, attached to the helm, and it looks different and it feels different. And hoping, like you said, that continuity helps keep that magic. Each of the 4 Toy Story films individually have all been really, really good. Mm-hmm. So I'm confident that if he, now that he's got his hands on the 5th one as well, that hopefully it keeps a lot of that same, beauty and charm to it for sure.
Absolutely. Because it's a series that, especially for our generation, it's been around for when we were teens, and when I first had my kids and I'm able to show the Toy Story, there's a special place for it. And like I said, if they did what I and a lot of others have said end Toy Story 5, you're going to have a lot of grown adults bawling their eyes out, and kids probably be like, wait, what?
Why are you crying?
Why are you crying about this? But,
let me have my moment.
To kind of end on things here, we have Bill Skarsgård will officially return as Pennywise in the It prequel series Welcome to Derry. So that's coming out next year on Max. So it's great that they got him back involved with it after doing the 2 films and, kind of making Pennywise his own now, because, of course, we had the series in the past that everyone, that was their that was everything about it. And now we've got his version, which everybody seemed to love, and I enjoyed a really creepy performance by him, and to get him back on board, especially as he's in everything now. We've got The Crow coming out. We just had Boy Kills World. He's doing just about everything now. To see him go back, which it hasn't been that long, but to want to return, already to do and play it again is really cool.
And he's doing it for a series. That seems to be kind of the theme of the episode. He's doing it for Max, for television, right? So it's going to be a series. How involved he's going to be, it's still to be determined. But he puts on that makeup again, man. I remember when he first showed up as Pennywise, and he looked so creepy and so sick and sadistic, in that that evil smile that he can have. It's fun, and I love that he's coming back to that a little bit, and it's going to be fun to see, how he takes on that character again in this type of environment for a series as opposed to a film. So I'm excited for that when it does come out next year, because I think they've been filming it, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm excited to see that come out for sure.
It's still wild to see him do the smile without the makeup, because I put it with Jim Carrey with his Grinch smile. You thought the Grinch smile when he's in all the prosthetics is just our CGI or something else. No, Jim Carrey can contort his face to get that way, and Bill kind of did the same thing. Getting that creepy smile, because I've seen him do a few interviews and they asked him to do it and he breaks down and does it, and you can see just Pennywise show up in his eyes, and then you just get the smile. I'm all right, you can contort your face to do that smile.
Seeing him do that without the makeup too, I'm yep, don't like that. Turning that on, turning that up, like really good, really talented at it, which is crazy. But yeah, that's definitely going to be a fun one to watch when it comes out on Max next year.
And sure. We've got a lot of horror coming to series with Hostel, with It. We also have the Jason series, which is going through some changes. We've got a lot of horror series coming out now, which has been like Chucky is still going, and you had the Scream series for a little while. Yep. Like,
I love it.
Horror is definitely testing the waters of scripted series.
I love it. I'm here for it. Give me. I'm a big horror fan, and give me everything you can, even in TV series, because still there's something special about going to a theater and seeing a horror film. But yeah, I mean, if you can make it work on TV as well, let's go. Let's do it. I'm excited for that too.
Yep.
So now we want to move into our TV review for the week. So we've got on Disney Plus the new Star Wars series, The Acolyte. Now, they dropped the first 2 episodes for this week. Now we're going to be getting single episodes for the rest of the season. I believe it ends mid-July, I think.
Yeah, I believe it's right before Deadpool and Wolverine drops at the end of July.
So mid to late July is when the series will wrap up, so we'll get individual episodes. But it kicked off very well with a 2-episode premiere this week, and it follows the story of Osha, who is she's a former Jedi Padawan who leaves the Jedi Order, and she's kind of off on her own doing her own thing. But this is centered around, more or less, we're going to get a little spoilery here, so I'm just going to preface that now because we have to add a little bit of context, and we'll get more spoilery as we go week to week. But just to kind of kick off this for those who haven't seen it yet, it starts with the premise of this is 4 main Jedi are being hunted for, more or less allowing, Osha and her, what we wind up, spoiler, her twin sister, lost their home to a fire when they were younger. And these Jedi, I don't know if they allowed it to happen. It's still kind of like,
you're still unraveling that mystery.
There's still a little bit of a mystery behind it, but they were the ones responsible for protecting that area. And you have Osha, who winds up being more on the good side, and her twin, who looks just like her, being on the bad side. The twin is hunting these Jedi to get revenge for, losing their planet. And that's kind of the biggest high-level way I can describe this without getting too much into spoilers. Just the fact that she's a twin is kind of a spoiler for the first episode. But, I'm really enjoying it so far.
Yeah, because this is kind of, the rise of the Sith. We're getting the first real evil side of the Force, and people who are training outside of the Jedi temples to learn the Force. And we have a mystery helmeted character that we got to see just a little bit, but yeah, we're dealing with that. Kind of got an assassin that's going around, but she's also marked that she needs to kill at least one of these Jedi without a weapon. So it means no knives, no anything, no lightsaber, just needs to kill a Jedi with her bare hands. We still don't exactly know why. Like, we have the one premise of this village and, all this stuff that happened to Osha and her sister, but, there's still a kind of a big mystery. And I'm really enjoying having a Star Wars kind of murder mystery, but, with kind of a big spoiler here, because it's kind of hard to talk about this part because it's the first 5 minutes of episode 1. So we knew going in that Carrie-Anne Moss was going to be a part of this, and we were really looking forward to seeing her, outside of Trinity doing something big and action-packed. And her character, her Jedi Master character, definitely felt like Trinity.
Yeah, very much stylized, though.
But a big twist that she's the first to fall within the first 5 minutes of the episode. Like, you got a big name as Carrie-Anne Moss, and you've killed her off in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, so the where it gets a little twisty at the beginning is you see this hooded figure showing up at this place looking for Carrie-Anne Moss's Jedi, her name is Endara, and she's one of the 4 responsible, one of the 4 being hunted, right? So there's this awesome fight sequence that breaks out at this bar where she basically tries to have Endara attack her with everything that she's got. But obviously the Jedi are supposed to be the peacekeepers of the galaxy, and she's not going to just attack her unprovoked. So she kind of provokes her into starting to kind of defend some people, and she uses a couple, dirtier fighting tactics to kind of distract her in order to beat her, but she doesn't beat her without, using weapons. So she still hasn't fulfilled her task. Well, they think it's Osha who's responsible for this because find out later that she's a twin, and it's her twin that she thought had passed, and it's a little convoluted in that sense, in my opinion, but it's still a fun story because you have the dynamics of trying to figure out, is she really the bad guy, but you find out that she's not because she's a twin and her twin's actually alive and she's the evil one.
Especially at the same time, they have them. Of course, it's the same actress playing both.
Of course, yeah.
But it's the same look between the two, but they both think each other's dead. Like, May thinks that Osha's dead. Osha thinks May's dead, but they look exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how would they maintain the same look without knowing? And of course, it's probably because they didn't want to have to give. It's also for the murder mystery, because you're thinking, oh, well, Osha did it, and, her sister's dead, so it had to be her. Oh, no, she's got a twin sister that looks exactly like her. There was a little bit with that was like, oh, I'll just go along with it, because they don't know each other are alive, so how are they? Same hairstyle, same hair color, same just everything. Mm-hmm. But you kind of let it go, because I've really enjoyed it. Like, I think visually it looks great. I mean, you've got the same Star Wars wipes that happen a lot, but, set design, costume design, everything looks good, because we are getting more of the Jedi Knights. So, they all, depending on their level between the Masters and the Knights, and, kind of throughout, all have different outfits that they wear, and they're all similar but different. But you've got a nice kind of expansion of the Star Wars universe, because this is taking place in the past many, many, many years ago. We're getting a few different ship designs. So I felt like it really had me grasped from the beginning. Like, there was some dialogue that might have been better, and the story is still kind of playing out, and the whole twin thing was okay, but I'm having a good time with it so far.
Yeah, and the big mystery right now is who is this Sith that is trying to train May in the ways of the Sith, right? To have her, more or less take her on as an apprentice at this point. Mm-hmm. Because if you know anything about the Sith have, they're only allowed to take on one apprentice at a time. They're, very much using the darker side of the Force in their abilities, and that's the fun dichotomy between Osha and May. Is they're both Force, they both have Force abilities. So one's using them for good, one's using them for evil, even though they come from the exact same set of circumstances, but they went two completely different pathways in their life. So it's fun to have that dichotomy, but you're sitting there trying to figure out who this mystery Sith is. You and I both have the exact same theory on who it actually is. We're not going to talk about it on here, obviously, because we'll wait for that reveal.
Yeah, not yet.
I think if you watch it, you may pick up on the same vibes. If you want to go ahead and throw a comment on our videos and let us know who you think this actual Sith person is, I'm very curious to see if you come to the same conclusion we do, because I think we both think it could be fairly obvious, but not obvious as to
or
who
then
it is.
They might be giving us a red herring that they were going to make you think it's this person, but it's actually this one that you would
be wild.
Never expect.
Yeah, 'cause I do have a dark horse candidate that I want to throw out at you that we didn't talk about before we did this. I think it would be crazy, but we'll see. But no, it's a lot of fun. So one of the things I wanted to highlight was the character Sol, who's one of the four main Jedi as well. So the four Jedi that are being hunted are Indara. There is a Master Tobin that you meet in the second episode, and then Sol, and then there's also a Wookiee Jedi by the name of Kel Naka that you see at the very end of episode 2, which is awesome to see a Wookiee Jedi. That is fantastic. And there's a very humorous moment in the way that he gets introduced that I think is absolutely hilarious. But it's gonna be a lot of fun. But Sol, who is, I forget the gentleman's name that plays him, was an actor from the Squid Games. So I believe you said he learned English like very shortly before starring in this role.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. It was amazing to me. Like, I think he said 4 months before he started filming, he learned English. Like, he had multiple translators and people working with him. He had people on set working with him, but like, just the way he was in the episode, like, you couldn't tell that he just learned English.
Yeah,
like,
he's fantastic.
That was amazing to see, and he's done a great job so far, and I really enjoy his character. And then we have Daphne Keenes, being a Jedi Padawan with Jackie Lan. She's been really fun to see so far, and kind of want to see where her character goes and what involvement she kind of gets, and kind of where we're going to expand her story. Looks like it could be a lot of fun. But yeah, I've really enjoyed the hierarchy that they're showing between the Jedi Knights and the Padawans, and the higher ups within the Jedi temples and everything else. Like, we somewhat see with the prequels, but we're getting much farther in the past to see exactly, how the Jedi became to be what they were, but also where their downfall, started to happen here. And yeah, 2 episodes in, I think it told its story really well, that the pacing was great. Like, the only thing with the second one with, I think it was Tobin was the second. Maybe it was just the actor's looks, or if that was a wig and a beard. There's something about his appearance that was just, I couldn't stop staring at, like, is that a fake beard? Is that fake hair? Like, it kind of took me out of the scenes just a little bit, because it just, like, I don't want to be talking about anybody's appearance. I don't have anything to say, but it kind of just stuck out. If it wasn't, it just stood out. Like, there's something just that didn't sit right with how his hair and his facial hair was. It just looked fake to me, and it kind of took me out of those scenes a little bit.
Yeah, I jokingly equated it to doing a poor man's Obi-Wan Kenobi cosplay of the Ewan McGregor version, right? But you don't know. But yeah, I agree. Aesthetically, that had a very different look. He's a meditating Jedi that you find in the second episode. So, like I said, not to spoil it too much to what happens, but you have May at this point to be giving this task to, like you said, kill one of these Jedi without it, and she's successful in some ways, but she still hasn't reached her end goal of killing a Jedi without using her hands yet, or without using any weapons yet, with just her bare hands. So it's curious to see how that winds up. There's a lot of pieces in play, a lot of moving parts. And one of the things that I think they've done well so far is to kind of blur the lines on maybe the Jedi aren't as good and altruistic as they are oftentimes portrayed to be. Like, okay, you see people having very differing views on the Jedi in these episodes. Like, okay, this is peaceful because you're like, are you really free, or is it peace based on your definition of peace and freedom? You know what I mean? So,
like, are they scared of the Jedi? Are they just the Jedi? Just because even with Carrie-Ann Moss, is like, she's sitting in this restaurant with a bunch of people around her, but it definitely seems like there's a group that's protecting her, but at the same time, are they? Are they kind of fear that respect is gained from fear with the Jedi, that they have such a kind of a strong hand on everything they do, that maybe that's why they're starting to crumble, is because they went a little too strong with how they do their beliefs, and if you're against it, then well,
you have to
now you have to be
face the consequences and all that. Yeah, and that kind of brings, you make a good point there, because there's another time later in one of the episodes where they talk about the Sith person talking to May, like he's saying the reason why I can take you on if you kill them without using a weapon is we know that lasers aren't going to stop a Jedi. We know that, certain steel doesn't affect a Jedi, you know what I mean? And it kind of plays into that, like you said, that fear and respect. Like, did the Sith become born because of, just ideological differences with the Jedi, you know what I mean? Like, they play on that dichotomy pretty well a little bit, I think, in the beginning, because like you said, in that scene with Carrie-Ann Moss in the beginning, like, you have these people, and there's one where, like, they think that May is joking, trying to get Andara to attack her, and the people around her start laughing, and all she does is hold up her hand, and they stop talking. Like, they stop laughing. And it's one of those, like...
It's like instant, just...
And they're like, all right, well, like, it's like a fear and a respect thing, I think. And it's interesting to see that play off of it.
I also think that line from our mystery Sith was, and maybe what he's doing too by having her kill a Jedi just by her bare hands, is maybe to also show their weakness, to show that the Jedi are not these gods, that they've kind of put themselves in a place to be to everybody, that kind of, if she can kill, she uses the Force, but if she can kill a Jedi with her bare hands, maybe that will start the fracture, that no one is going to be as afraid of them as they are, or care about them as much as they do, because you can show that someone can kill them with just their bare hands. And
so it's an interesting thing that I hope they continue to explore over the next several episodes, because I want to say it's 9 or 10 episodes.
I think it's 7 or 8.
7 or 8
is what
okay.
we get. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and it's. I'm in. I'm in on it. I'm in on this ride that they're going to take us on, because there's a lot of fun possibilities, especially with the way they end this episode, because I know that now they're moving on to hunting Kelnaka, the Wookiee Jedi as well, and there's the whole, Saul is trying to, go guns a-blazing after May and trying to get to the bottom of, this person that's attacking it, but then you've got the old classic Jedi Council that wants to sit there and have a conversation about it before they act and think about it rationally, and he's like, even he, who's normally this peaceful person, he's like, no, we have to get to, we can't let them, get away and re-strategize. We have to go after them now. And they're like, no, you need to come back in because this is how we do things. And I think that's going to be a fun dynamic that you see play out over these next couple episodes as well. Do you start seeing them, that fracturing, turning rogue, and kind of, doing things maybe not necessarily in the way the Jedi have always done them?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it so far. I think it gives us something different within the Star Wars universe. It's telling a little bit different tale. We're getting, we have yellow lightsabers, and we're seeing different costumes, and, the set designs are looking really, as we talked about with the budget for TV getting bigger, this had a pretty large budget, and it shows. It looks like a Star Wars film.
Visually, it's stunning.
On there, and it looks great. The action sequences have been a lot of fun. They've been more Matrix-esque,
a little bit, yeah.
Good hand-to-hand action combat. We've got a little bit of lightsaber in there, but I've really enjoyed it so far. The story has me intrigued. The actors are, doing well, other than, like we said, a little bit of the dialogue.
Some of it, yeah.
Could have used a little bit better, and I even had to laugh when I saw one character pop up, because I'm like, instantly, I remember you from The Good Place, and I can't see him but anything but The Good Place. But I need to, start seeing how much more involvement he may have in this series to be able to all right, let me not just pigeonhole him as, The Good Place, and see how he can act in this character. Because there's a little bit that I saw that, but he did do a good job. I believe his character's name is Kamir. And it's interesting to see kind of what his involvement may be going forward, or maybe he was just kind of a throwaway character just for an episode, or if he's going to have more involvement. But I love The Good Place, and to see him pop up, and I'm like, all right, I know you.
Made me happy too. I'm like, heck yeah, man. If you've seen The Good Place, you'll recognize him instantly. So he's one of the main characters on the show. So exciting to see him in the world of Star Wars now. So we'll see if he's more involved as the season goes on. But
overall, I really enjoyed these first two episodes. I think it gave us something different, something familiar. It told its story well. The pacing was really good. Visually, it looked great. There was nothing really that majorly I could say I didn't like or didn't enjoy about it, and I really want to see how this story plays out, because it's a murder mystery kind of story, even though we have some things unraveled already, but we still have the deeper story points on exactly why they're doing it, who the main Sith is, and kind of how it's going to unravel the Jedi Order from here.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. But yeah, you can catch the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte on Disney Plus right now. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we're looking forward to following through the rest of this season. It could be potentially 1 season or more. We don't know yet, but as the season goes along, we'll continue to review it here on the podcast. But you can check out the first 2 episodes right now on Disney Plus.
Yep. Moving on to our film review this week, we saw Bad Boys Ride or Die. So this is the 4th film in the Bad Boys franchise. Kind of takes place a few years after, well, actually, it didn't seem that far after Bad Boys 3, because we do get his son in jail still, but we do have some growing up, and we have some changes happening. So the main overall story of Bad Boys Ride or Die is that it comes out that their former captain, who passed away in the last movie, is tied up with the cartel, saying that he was a dirty cop, he was taking cartel money, he was behind a lot of the stuff that happens, and it's up to Marcus and Mike to clear his name and unravel, but they get tied up in a deeper, darker kind of story with them, but also that we see a little spoilers here with it, that we see Mike is getting married. So we've got the playboy of all playboys is finally tying the knot, but we also see Marcus has got some health issues, and there's something that happens to him that changes his output, which that kind of part of the film, I don't know, it was a little goofier than I was expecting, but it was fun, but it definitely added a lot more goofiness to the movie.
Yeah, and the bulk of the plot is them, going to the lengths they do to try to clear the captain's name, right? Mm-hmm. So they've got a couple of cops that they can trust. You were introduced to them in the third Bad Boys film, if you've seen it. If you are a fan of Bad Boys 1, 2, and even 3, you'll like 4.
Oh, yeah,
it's very much got similar humor, snappy dialogue between Martin Lawrence and Will Smith that, it's the funny one-line quips that they do back and forth with each other, that dynamic. You get some fun interactions with Reggie, who's now grown up and in the Marines, which if you've seen the trailer, you're aware of that as well. But there's some really funny stuff that goes with Reggie in this film. I think Reggie kind of gets a little bit of a redemption arc in this story, I think. Because, with Bad Boys 2, it was the whole, everybody knows the classic scene of him showing up to take Martin Lawrence's daughter on a date, and the conversation that Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, Mike and Marcus have with him at the door is just one of my favorite scenes, like, in a comedy film, because I jokingly say to, like, when my sister was growing up, if she ever bought a boy to the house that, our dad and I would do that.
Oh, we're doing that sequence once my kids get old enough.
You and I are both going to be doing that with your girls. It's going to be so funny. But, yeah, you get a little bit of redemption for him. I definitely won't spoil that because it is one of the highlights of the film. But he gets redemption in a big way, and it pays off a little bit at the end, too, with a very funny interaction at a cookout, too.
He's got some great moments in it.
Very for sure. But it does have a lot of the charm and tone that the other Bad Boys films have. So it is heavy on action. It's heavy on humor.
Great action sequences. That's all the Bad Boys movies had. It does action so well.
Yeah, in particular, there's one fight scene where there's like a camera attached to a gun that gets thrown around and moved and used and stuff, and shot in a way that's pretty cool visually and aesthetically too. But it follows a lot of the similar tropes of a typical Bad Boys film, where, like you said, it's action, it's funny, it's got a little bit of heart to it. But yeah, I mean, if you're fans of these films, it's definitely one that you'll enjoy this one too.
There's also a couple fun cameos which we don't want to spoil. Absolutely. That if you know people behind the film, but also internet sensations and stuff, there's some definite fun that they had with those cameos there. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the movie. Like you said, if you enjoyed the first 3, you're going to enjoy this one. It sticks to the formula that's worked so well for the Bad Boy movies. You do get a little more depth to Mike, and more Mike. You get him and going through some things that he's not used to. He's, like I said, he's getting married, and he's, he ends up having panic attacks, and he's dealing with different things of this movie because he's also, it involves more of his son, that his son is a core kind of plot to this movie after being a core plot to the last one. A lot of stuff revolves around him, and I think everyone did their job really well. We had some, new characters introduced, but I think it was a lot of fun that they did. The action sequence is great. Like I said, some of the stuff with Marcus was a little goofier than normal, but it was still fun. But, not to give too much more away, but I'll say there's some spoilers with it, that he's kind of having visions after having a health issue happen. And these visions are just ridiculous when he just goes on and on about all this different stuff because of visions, and he's feeling invincible.
Yeah, he feels like he can't die. It's very funny because he just does some absolutely ridiculous stuff that if you truly believe you're not going to die, you're just like, well, I'm going to do this. And
even during a shootout, like there's big shootout in a club with jelly beans and some alcoholic drinks, and he's just like not giving a care in the world that he's eating jelly beans and drinking.
Because he's not going to die.
He's not going to die. That's a goofier part of it, but it's still in the end it tied together well with everything they were doing. We're trying to show a little bit more growth with these characters, but overall it was a fun time. Like, this is one of those tentpole summer action blockbuster movies that's well worth seeing in theaters. It told its story well. Great action.
For sure.
I mean, again, it's definitely formulaic to the Bad Boy movies. Like, they have their style, they have their presentation. You're going to see iconic, like, knocking someone out of the way, rolling, slow pan up from, the roadway. There's certain sequences you're going to see, and they don't disappoint in it as well. And
they play the hits.
Yeah,
they play the hits. It's one that we'll definitely recommend, that if you are fans of those films, to definitely watch. I know some people are feeling a little bit of a certain way about Will Smith, given like the incidences of the last couple of years or whatever, but I think if you give the film a chance, if you do enjoy these, it's definitely worth a watch for sure, because it's got a lot of those, like you said, those tropes that make it a Bad Boys film. You know you're going to see a Bad Boys film when you go to see this. It's well done for this type of movie, and it's definitely one that I think people will enjoy.
The only real negative I could probably say about it revolves around the recasting of Marcus's wife. So there's some videos and other information out there about the original actress. We don't really know what's going on with her and why she wasn't brought back to play Teresa. But they had a brand new actress to play Teresa, and it's not that she wasn't good, but it's almost like it was a completely different character from his wife before, because there was such a great dynamic between Marcus and his wife and everything they did. And the new actress just felt like it's the same woman or the same character, but it felt like a completely different person because of the affection, the emotion, how she was talking and acting. Like, it did not feel like the same wife that he had before. And it kind of took me out of it a little bit, just because that didn't feel like Teresa.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there. And obviously we don't know the circumstances around why she wasn't involved in this in particular. I didn't dive that deep into it either, but it definitely was a little odd based on the last film, the last few films or whatever. Like you said, they had really good chemistry between those two actors and those two characters. But yeah, it definitely felt a little off, a little different there. But overall, I don't think it hampered my enjoyment of the film. Yeah. I enjoyed, seeing Vanessa Hudgens return as her character in this film as well, and I forget the guy's name that was the other guy.
Which I believe Vanessa was pregnant while she was doing Bad Boys here, which was kind of crazy with the action and everything that she did. So
but they definitely hit it well, for sure. But there's some definite bright spots for her in this film too, and a particular funny interaction between her and Mike's son that was very amusing. But go definitely and see what we're talking about there. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you got, like I said, you got some decent character arcs with his son, with with Mike and even Marcus a little bit. He's still kind of just the same as he's always been, as the comic relief, crazy sidekick guy. But you got a little bit of depth to him, but he's still kind of the same. It's more Mike, his son, and a few other characters that you see a little bit of change and growth and other things happening that, kind of carries throughout the entire film, which I really enjoy. That, after 4, you've got to see these characters start changing a little bit. They're in their 50s now in real life and everything else, so that there's got to be a little change as these characters go on.
Yeah, they're definitely not writing these characters like they're in their 20s. So they're dealing with real life adult problems and adult things that could happen to their health, right? As you get older and you start to, your body doesn't function the same when you're 50 as it does when you're 20. So they definitely put that in a practical but funny way as well. So they did a good job with that for sure.
Yeah. So Bad Boys Ride or Die is in theaters now. It is, like I said, it's a summer action blockbuster that's worth seeing in theaters. If you enjoyed the other Bad Boys movies, we can't see why you wouldn't enjoy these. We did. Bad Boys 1 is one of my favorite movies that I love going back to. Probably at least once or twice a year I'll watch the original Bad Boys because it's so much fun. It's dramatic action comedy. Like it had everything kind of perfect that it did with that first film, and I enjoyed still seeing them go at it. Like they kind of talked, and it's probably, if it makes enough money, then Martin Lawrence said he would continue doing these movies as long as Will Smith would. So we'll see if this is the final one or if we continue on and we get more Bad Boys movies. But go check it out. And of course, as we've talked about with cost of things, check with your local theater for budget days and go check it out. But we think it's well worth seeing in theaters.
Absolutely.
So coming up this week, we have Inside Out 2. So I'm going to be taking my kids to see that because I've got kind of a preteen. So this movie's kind of coming out at the right time for my family to see her dealing with the new emotions that character is going to be dealing with. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see with her and see kind of that evolution that they're going to do with adding an anxiety and all these other emotions. Because like I said, I'm dealing with that with a kid right now, so it's going to see how much real life it's mirroring with that.
Sure.
But we also wanted to talk about with streaming. We got a surprise drop last week on May 31st, June 1st. Out of the blue, Godzilla -1 is on Netflix. I don't think anybody saw that happening at all. Like in beginning of May, we had it drop in Japan. They got the physical release, they got digital releases, but we hadn't heard anything at all about the U.S. release of Godzilla -1, and then it's like It's the next day. Hey, Godzilla -1 is on Netflix. Like, wait, what?
Right on the front page. It was crazy. That's a film that we've been, just gushing over ever since we saw it last year. It was one of our favorite movies last year. We've been waiting, anticipating it coming out on streaming to watch. And then I know we're both looking forward to the 4K versions of both the color and the black and white version as well. Still up in the air is when we're getting those. Hopefully later this year is what it's starting to sound like a little bit. But yeah, imagine our surprise when I open up Netflix on the 1st of June and there it was. Like that was a wonderful surprise to show up to, because like you said, we had heard pretty much nothing about when it was going to show up on streaming here in the States, and Netflix just with the mic drop June 1st.
That's a huge get for Netflix to have a movie like that. Like, it did so well, but so loved. Like, we can't recommend checking out enough. It's on Netflix. Netflix has it. You can watch it with your subscription. Yeah, I believe it's on demand. I think it was one of the first movies to be #1 on Netflix and #1 on digital purchases too, on like iTunes charts. So like, everybody's been waiting for it, and they showed up to show like, yeah, we've been waiting to watch this again. And yeah, I can't wait to get the physical release and get that the minus color, because if you can go back and look at a review of Godzilla -1 minus color, that is probably my favorite version of it. I love the regular version too, but there's something about the black and white version that was just so amazing. So don't make me wait too long to get that black and white version, please, because I'm ready to sit down and watch this movie again, because it was so good. I actually got my oldest daughter, I talked about with Inside Out 2, she's got into Godzilla big time, so I've watched some of the Godzilla movies, and I'm like, okay, I'll see how she does with having to read subtitles, and see if she gets the same effect as she did out of the more over-the-top Godzilla and Kong movies as she does with this more, I want to say, grounded Godzilla movie. But yeah, I'm just so surprised that we got that drop. Out this week, though, for streaming, we have Ultraman Rising, also on Netflix. So you have another Japanese property with an animated movie. That'll be out on June 14th. So that's going to be interesting to check that out. Ultraman's been around for so long. And, it's inspired a lot of different things in pop culture. So to see them do a new animated movie, it's going to be interesting to check out.
For sure.
On demand, we have I Saw the TV Glow also dropping on June 14th. Now, that one is one that I've been really intrigued by. It's a psychological kind of horror drama that I've heard nothing but amazing things about, but I don't think it aired anywhere around us here so that we could go check it out. So having that on demand this week, I can't wait to check that film out.
Yeah, it was one that I know you and I were both hoping that we probably weren't going to do a review for the podcast for, but it was something we both wanted to see. But for whatever reason, it got a very limited release everywhere, and it just never came to our area at a place or a time that we could go out of our way to see it. But now that it's coming out on demand, I'm very much checking that one out when it comes out.
And lastly, this is a huge week for series. So we already got the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte. Now we have The Boys Season 4 has a 3-episode premiere on June 13th. And then we have House of the Dragon Season 2, 1-episode premiere. They're sticking with, you're only getting 1 episode every single week until they're done. That's dropping on HBO and Max on June 16th. But that's 2 huge series that we have dropping in the same week.
This is a week that I've had circled on my calendar all year long when these shows finally got announced, when they were coming out. I love... I've talked ad nauseum before. If you know anything about me, I loved Game of Thrones so much. Despite how I felt about the final 2 seasons, it's still, all the seasons before it, top 5 TV show of all time for me. I love Game of Thrones so much. House of the Dragon was fantastic as well, season 1. Very excited for season 2 to start. And then The Boys. The Boys I kind of just tried on a whim because I'm like, oh, it's a superhero show, but it's on Amazon. And then... within the first episode, I'm like, oh, this is absolutely insane and nothing like I was expecting. I absolutely love this. It's a show that I've been a diehard fan of ever since it came out as well. And it's finally coming out with its new season. Very excited about this. This is a huge week for TV because, like you said, we just started reviewing The Acolyte. Now we got The Boys and House of Dragon like all coming out at the same time.
And then
too.
at the end of the month, we have the Bear next season. So like this show I'm a huge fan of too. So like June is a huge month for TV, like June and July.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it would normally be. Because usually you'll have like your September, like mid to end September when all the regular network shows and stuff come back. That's when TV really pops off, right? But no, here we are in June getting some huge things coming out, and I'm here for it.
There's a lot to binge.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff to watch. But those are all things that we're looking forward to.
Yep.
So coming up on next week's episode of the podcast, we will be breaking down episode 3 of Star Wars: The Acolyte. We just started taking a journey on that and looking forward to watching episode 3 and where that moves forward. And we'll also be reviewing Disney Pixar's Inside Out 2. It's another one we're both looking forward to, another family film that we're both very excited to see and check out. We really enjoyed the first one as well, so checking out the new one, and we're going to be excited to review that one too. So until next time, I'm Josh, he is Brad, and we'll see you next week.